I very much appreciate the FRMC Chairman, Mr. Richard Magnus, and his committee members for their effort in putting together a very comprehensive and balanced report. I do appreciate their efforts to consult widely and to look at the difficult issues of both ensuring commuters' interest in having affordable fares and the long-term financial sustainability of the public transport system. Reading the report and also gathering from the generally positive response from the public to the report, I can clearly see that the FRMC has put in a lot of heart into their recommendations, in particular for a concession framework that better ensures fare affordability for Singaporeans. I think it is useful to recap what is the context and purpose of this committee that I appointed. In June of 2012, I asked Mr. Richard Magnus to chair a committee to review and recommend improvements to the public transport fare review mechanism. In February of this year, I further requested the committee to review the existing public transport concession schemes and propose improvements or new schemes to benefit a wider group of commuters so that we can help keep down their expenditure on public transport. We have studied the report carefully. The FRMC has put together a list of recommendations that meets its terms of reference and, in my view, addresses the issue of fare affordability in a comprehensive manner. The government accepts the FRMC's recommendations in full, including the new fare formula, the fare review mechanism, which includes the proposal to allow for smoothing of fare increases by rolling over part of the increase to the following year, and the proposals for new concessions and enhancements to the existing schemes. The new fare formula, which is an improvement over the old, was meticulously crafted to better reflect the cost pressures that the PTOs face. Overall, the report is fair and reasonable and contains a timely reminder that we need to make regular fare adjustments from time to time to ensure that the system is sustainable and workable. Its recommendations will provide the Public Transport Council with an enhanced framework to ensure that fares remain affordable across the diverse spectrum of public transport users. In February this year, I explained in Parliament that our fare increases over the last few years have been slower than that of comparable cities like Hong Kong and London. For example, London has raised their public transport fares by 6.8% in 2011, 5.6% in 2012, and in January of this year by another 4.2%. Fares in Hong Kong have increased by a total of 13% since 2009, including the latest 2.7% in June of this year, which was preceded by a 5.4% increase last year. I should also add that fares in Singapore were not higher than both cities to begin with. In contrast, since 2005, when the first FRMC had proposed the current fare formula, or the past fare formula that was valid to 2012, from 2005 to 2011, which was when our last fare increase took place, public transport fares in Singapore have increased by a cumulative 2.7%. That is 2005 to 2011, a cumulative 2.7%, or an average of 0.4% per annum. This is despite the fact that there have been significant changes to the cost environment of the public transport operators. For instance, diesel price has gone up by about 90%, while national average wages have gone up by about 30% over the same period. In short, fares have not kept pace with increases in operating cost. To the FRMC's credit, they did not duck this issue and have recognized the need for some discipline in ensuring that we have reasonably regular fare adjustments to keep our public transport system financially sustainable. That said, we would like to assure Mr. Gan Thiam Poh that we remain fully committed to ensuring that public transport fares remain affordable. Wages over the past few years have gone up at a much faster rate than fares, which means that fares have actually become more affordable for the average commuter. This is an important point that I like to emphasize. Public transport fares for the average commuter have become more affordable, not less. However, we do recognize that there are certain commuter groups who would still be in need of help. And this is why I had asked the FRMC to also study the affordability of public transport for Singaporeans of different income levels and various special groups who may need assistance should fares be raised. I am therefore pleased that the FRMC has come up with several useful recommendations which we have decided to accept. The FRMC has recommended that government implement and fund two new concession schemes. One for persons with disabilities, or PWDs for short, and the other for low-income workers, LIWs. I'm pleased to inform Mr. Chris D'Souza and Dr. Lily Neo, who have asked for more public transport assistance for disabled and needy Singaporeans, that the government agrees with the FRMC's proposals. We are committed to further strengthening our social safety net on the public transport front. The two new concession schemes for LIWs and PWDs go beyond giving these two groups of Singaporeans ad hoc assistance through public transport vouchers. We will, of course, need some time to work out the details of these two concession schemes, including who can apply and how to apply, and the precise concessionary benefits. However, our rough estimate is that about 500,000 Singaporeans will be eligible for these two new schemes. This would constitute a 40% increase in the number of commuters who currently enjoy various fare concessions, from about 1.2 million currently to about 1.7 million. We have not yet decided on the exact amount of discounts to give to these two groups. However, it is my intention to ensure that the discounts given will more than offset any fare increase in the next fare exercise. So the discounts that we are going to give to these two groups, the LIWs and the PWDs, the discounts that are given to them will more than offset any fare increase in the next fare exercise. I think what is of greatest interest to all members is not so much the new fare formula that's proposed in the FRMC report, although I will touch on it briefly at the end, but instead what this really means for the next fare review exercise, how much will fares increase, and when. Following the government's acceptance of the FRMC report, the next task would be for the Public Transport Council, or PDC, to apply the new fare formula for the next fare review exercise and consider how to incorporate the FRMC's recommendations on existing concessions. The PTC will need time to go through various deliberations, and while it may start the process for the 2013 fare review exercise later this year, its decision and the implementation of the decision will not likely be in 2013, but only in the first half of 2014 for practical reasons. The PTC will consider the 2012 fare cap that was based on the old formula and which was suspended during the FRMC review, as well as the 2013 fare cap based on the new fare formula. Should the PTC, after careful study, decide not to effect both fare caps in one go, it may allow for part of this to be rolled over as provided for under the new fare mechanism framework. Given the intent and spirit of what the FRMC has recommended to smoothen fare increases and ensure fare affordability, I would urge the PDC to consider the possibility that any fare increase for this next round of fare adjustment not exceed the average national wage increase for 2013. This will avoid an outcome where fares suddenly become less affordable for the average commuter. So what I'm suggesting to the PDC is that for this next round of fare increase, that any increase not exceed the average national wage increase for 2013. The PDC will, of course, have to decide what exactly the increase will be. That is their prerogative. And as part of the overall package for the coming round of fare adjustments, also look into implementing in full or in part the various enhancements to existing fare concessions as recommended by the FRMC. But if we add together all these possible changes to the concession schemes, including those to be funded by the government, the next fare exercise could see a total of about 1 million commuters actually benefiting in some way. This could include preschoolers, students, including those in the polytechnics, and also those who may wish to take up the adult and senior citizen monthly passes, which will cap expenditure for heavy public transport users. This is in addition to the low-income workers and people with disabilities whom I mentioned earlier. We have to be patient for the details, as these are matters on which the PDC will make the call as part of its fare review deliberations. The PDC should also take into consideration the FRMC's recommendation for the PTOs to make one-off contributions from the fare increase they receive to the Public Transport Fund. Together with the channeling into this fund, the fines that have been incurred by PTOs for regulatory breaches, we will have a sizable amount which can allow for more generous public transport vouchers to be given out to all needy households affected by any fare increase. Let me next touch on the issue of service quality, as there has been some feedback that this is missing from the FRMC report. Some have suggested that we should suspend fare increases until there is tangible improvement in service levels. I do acknowledge that this is a source of unhappiness for some. The FRMC has carefully considered this, whether to have a service component in a fare formula, and decided that the issue of service level is best addressed separately outside the fare formula, where the government can regulate and work with the operators to improve service levels. I think this is sensible and certainly practical in terms of keeping the fare formula relatively straightforward. In addition, we have practical considerations, as we have a unified fare structure that is applicable for the entire public transport system. And it would be challenging to try to give differentiated fare increases to different PTOs on account of service quality issues. However, not having service quality as part of the new fare formula does not mean that we are not raising service levels or that we are letting the PTOs off easily. In the 2008 Land Transport Master Plan, LTMP, we explicitly declared our long-term intention to make public transport a mode of choice. This was reaffirmed in our recently launched and refreshed 2013 LTMP. Shifting commuters away from private to public transport is a strategic imperative given our land constraints and to make our city even more livable. Our aim is to raise the public transport mode share during the peak period from the current 63% to 70% by 2020 and to 75% by 2030. To do so, we know that we have to substantively improve the availability and quality of public transport, and we have already announced many initiatives, both long and short term. For bus commuters, we are accelerating the program to add the 800 buses, or what is going to amount to about a 20% increase to the bus fleet. In the areas where we have implemented new routes or improved existing services, the benefits are already being felt by commuters. For rail, we will be adding more than 100 trains from 2014 over the next 3 years across all our rail lines. We will also be upgrading the signaling system of the north-south and east-west lines by 2018 to allow peak hour trains to run at 100-second intervals instead of the 120 seconds currently. We will also be doubling our rail network from about 180 kilometers today to about 360 kilometers over the next 15 to 20 years. In addition to adding more buses and trains, we have also seen some improvement in the reliability of the rail network. For instance, train withdrawal rates for our oldest north-south and east-west lines have come down significantly from about 4 per 100,000 train kilometers in June of 2012, so that means 4 withdrawals every 100,000 kilometers traveled, to about 2.3 per 100,000 train kilometers in September of this year. We are also raising the operating performance standards, increasing penalties, and tightening our regulatory framework to ensure that the PTOs deliver higher service levels. Starting next year, the rail operators will be running more train trips throughout the day to bring down waiting times to no more than 5 minutes for most of the day, even outside of the peak period. PTOs will also need to further reduce the number of short service delays below 5 minutes and strengthen their maintenance regimes to raise reliability levels. We will complement these improvements with stiffer penalties for non-compliance. We are therefore making significant moves to improve service levels and to realize these improvements as fast as we can. Major improvements will take time, but they are on the way. Meanwhile, it is imperative that the public transport system as a whole continue to remain financially viable, with commuters, transport operators, and the government all contributing. Hence, there will still be a need for regular fare increases to keep the system going, to maintain and to improve service levels. But in doing so, with my assurance that we will insulate the more vulnerable and needy Singaporeans from the full impact of fare increases. So let me give you this assurance that while fares are likely to have to go up in the coming years, they will not become less affordable for the average commuter, and in fact will be considerably more affordable for the low income and the disadvantaged groups. This is my intention, and I have every confidence that we can achieve it.